Hello, this is Brian. Welcome to part 2 of my Chilao excursion. Walking underneath some beautiful Coulter and Jeffrey pines. I'm on the little service road that runs through the middle. Back that way towards Peak 5560. Newcomb Ranch Peak will be over this way. I'm not rushing anything today. Just feels good to be amongst the tall pines today. I planted a lot of knobcomb pines around here too. One thing you'll see if you come here, a lot of knobcomb pines, and even they're starting to get quite decently sized. And right towards the visitor center, they have some quite large Arizona cypress trees. Some of them are getting quite large, actually. So, trees definitely like it here. The Jeffrey pines are quite tall. Here's another Jeffrey pine right here. Probably about 130 feet, which is pretty decent for the Angeles. This is a drier national forest than the San Bernardino National Forest. But, I mean, there are areas here in the Angeles where trees get quite large. In this area they get pretty decently sized as well. And some of the, I'm going to be honest, Coulter pines, which are typically quite a bit smaller than the Jeffrey pines. There's some quite large Coulter pines here too. And along Angeles Crest Highway in the area, there are some Coulter pines that are quite large as well. So you come here to the Chilao area, some nice large trees. Now, if you're here, how do you tell which is which? Well, I'll give you a quick little rundown. Jeffrey pines have medium length needles, and their cones, they're decent sized cones with the prickles that stick down and sometimes curve backward a little bit. Knobcomb pines are around, especially around here, are typically the smaller trees, the smallest of the pines in this area, and then their cones have little warty knobs on them. Coulter pines, well, if you know what a Coulter pine cone looks like, it's pretty easy to tell. But let's see if I can find a decent specimen here. Let's see. This is, I mean, I can tell you right now, Coulter pines have the really large, heavy cones with the really sharp claws in their cone scales. There's a Coulter, see, there's a Jeffrey pine and there's a Coulter pine. See, the Jeffrey pine is usually taller, much taller, narrower, but not always super narrow. Actually, that growth habit's kind of more similar to what a ponderosa would look like, actually. But that's a Jeffrey pine. Coulter pines, shorter, stouter, broader crowns, and again, much larger cones, and typically longer needles. So here we are. It's obviously much larger cones, much deadlier cones if they fall on you. And then the knobcomb pines are the smaller ones. They're very widely variable in their growth habits. Sometimes they can be squat, short, and with wide crowns. Sometimes they can be very upright and narrow, but with smaller cones with the knobby warts. And the cones typically stay closed on knobcomb pines for a very long time because they tend to be at least mostly serotinous, meaning they stay closed waiting for fire. So these knobcomb pines, most of the time you're going to see closed cones, but sometimes cones do break off, and sometimes you'll find some open cones on the ground. So it's not always like 100% But yeah, we got a lot of knobcomb pines here on the backside of this little picnic area. I think it's actually a small campground. And then we have one tree here that's very not native here in the Angeles National Forest. This is Robinia pseudoacacia. This is the black locust, and it's just about completely leafless for winter. Today's October 19th, just so you know. These trees usually shed their leaves quite early out here. So kind of what I'm doing right now is just poking around looking for, maybe looking for a fire break to get to the peaks, but I'm also trying to explore the trees around here as well. Here's a larger knobcomb pine right here. This one's about 50 feet tall. I mean, they can get up to 80 feet. And see, sometimes you will find open cones on the ground. That's an open knobcomb pine cone. And their cones are often whirled around the branches. You can see all the cones on these branches here. A lot of times they're whirled around. Like you got a cone on each side of the branch, opposite, like this. See how they're kind of whirled around? And the foliage is usually a lighter grayish, lighter greenish color. So if you're in the Chilao area, hopefully that'll help you discern what kind of pine you're looking at. I mean, you do have some beautiful pines here, I'll tell you. And then over by the actual building for the visitor center, there are a couple of gray pines over there. Now, those ones are a little similar to the Coulter pines, but their cones are a little bit smaller, and they're still quite heavy, and they can still jab you. They still have those claws too, like the Coulter pine. But the needles are grayish green and wispier. And then they'll be over by the visitor center. So the color of the foliage of the gray pine is kind of similar to the knob cones, only the cones are much larger. The needles are kind of wispier. And the other couple of conifers we have here, we got incense cedar and big cone Douglas fir over towards that way, kind of in the middle of the frame. And incense cedar is not in the pine family, it's in the cypress family, whereas big cone Douglas fir is in the pine family. And it's a close relative of the Pacific Northwest's Douglas fir, which is almost tied as redwood for the tallest tree in the world. However, there might have been Douglas firs in the past that it might have been over 400 feet tall. But big cone Douglas firs, they may get up to about 130, 140 feet tall sometimes. On rare occasions even a little taller, but they're usually a lot shorter. But this is it. This is Chilao. Beautiful area. Yeah, I probably should have just parked in here maybe, but it's alright. We got some sandbar willow right here, shedding its leaves because it's going into winter. This is Salix exigua. Little touch of fall color. Not as bright as these arroyo willows here, Salix lastiolepis, which color a little bit later. This is Salix lastiolepis. You can find this from sea level to 8,000–9,000 feet in the mountains. So that's one plant you will see in the coast, coastal canyons, foothill canyons, mountain canyons. Just a nice area here. So I might be able to find a cross-country route to get to Newcomb Ranch Peak over there. So I think I'm going to go head up that way. It'll probably be roughly about a 400-foot gain, I would say. Maybe I'll just kind of go through this wash really quickly. So, I mean, there's a little nature trail by the Chilao Visitor Center, and that nature trail does cross a fire break, that you could lead you up to Newcomb Ranch Peak, which is the peak right above Newcomb Ranch. Or you can also call it Peak 5604 because that's the elevation of it. But I think there are signs saying stay on trail, so I'm not going to use that fire break and go off trail. So I'll just find another fire break further away from the nature trail. Just out of respect for the nature center. Nice people in there. Alright. I think the peak's going to be over there somewhere. We got probably about a 400-foot climb. 350, 400-foot climb. Maybe a little bit more if I have any dips in the way, but I'm going to go look for a fire break. Another fire break to start ascending that peak. You can basically pretty much find your own routes up these peaks. So I'll see you on my next video. I'll see where I am.